for men, it's like, oh, like you said, oh, you're a growing boy, you need this, like all of that is kind of like heaped on. And then in some cultures that I've worked with, the idea of like food is love, which I think is really great. Like food is a way of like showing love, your appreciation for the person. But then it's almost like if they're given something and then they're slapped in the face for taking it. It's like, oh, you need to eat. Oh, but don't eat too much. Oh, you've eaten too much. Now you're fat. Now you're this. And it's oftentimes that double standard for women in the family. You know, their culture says you need to eat. This is how we show our love, but don't overindulge and don't become fat, because that is the worst thing that can happen.
Welcome back to Heal Your Roots podcast. I'm Kira Yakubov-Plashansky. Joining me is guest co-host Dr. Katie Manganello and a returning guest, Alan Michael Lewis, licensed marriage and family therapist and director of internships at Council for Relationships. Thank you both for coming back on today.
Thanks for having me.
So excited to have us three talking today. This will be fun.
I know. So actually, we realized this after the fact, but Katie and Alan actually know each other outside of the psych world. So this is going to be a fun one. I think we all have pretty good chemistry that we can kind of flow in today's episode together.
It's funny. I think that I was asking Katie, it's like, oh, are you taking new clients? Just like in a passing meeting, and she's like, yeah, send them my way. And then you announced that you were going to be at Heal Your Roots, and I'm like, this is crazy. This is like worlds colliding in this moment.
I know.
Small world.
A really coincidence, yeah.
So Alan, I know you've been on an episode with us before, but for any listeners who may not have heard that episode, can you share a little bit about yourself and who you work with?
Yeah, well, first of all, if you haven't listened to that episode, how dare you? I'm just kidding. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work at Council for Relationships. I was director of clinical internships, and I just got a promotion to senior director of clinical programs. So still working with the interns, but still working with our programs for child, adolescents, older adults, and veterans as well. So exciting things happening over here. But for the clients that I see, usually I am working with folks on communication, relationship dynamics. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is food in general. But a lot of the work that I do with my clients is talking about and healing their relationship with food. I was talking to somebody recently, just in passing, I think, and I said, you know, there are a lot of us that can quote the 1-800-99-JENNY, like from like Jenny Craig when we were like little kids. And I was like, if we can quote that, I mean, we need to have a conversation about our relationship with food. Because if we're little hearing that jingle and thinking like, oh, diet culture is the way, we really need to consider our thoughts about food. So that's a lot of what I do with my clients. And it's surprising how food and how it impacts themselves, their relationship, their family, comes up a lot in the sessions that I do with my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I know that you have your MFT foodie account, which I love following. You're always at like the best spots, and like you have really good photos of all the food that makes it super enticing. I don't know if you have affiliates with these restaurants, but you totally should for advertising.
I don't yet, but if you are a restaurant, no, but yeah, I like exploring. I do have my go-tos, so sometimes it's a little repetitive, but yeah, if you have any recommendations, let me know.
Awesome.
Fun fact, Josh and I, my fiance and I, we used to have a food page too, and then we just kind of got lazy and stopped posting on it. But yeah, we actually just this weekend we're talking about bringing it back. Maybe after the wedding.
That's exciting. Did you guys go to different places as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we also similarly had our go-to places, right? But yeah, we tried. And sometimes we got free food places.
Really?
If we told them, we were like, oh, we have a food page. And then they'd be like, oh, here's a free dessert or something. So that's fun. You should try that if you haven't.
I'm going to log that in the back of my head to keep it for future use.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like sometimes I lead with the fact that I'm a therapist instead. So then it turns into, yeah, there's a lot going on in my life, and so then we actually end up talking about like whoever's waiting on us their life for their experience rather than like, oh, I have this food page. So maybe I should lead with the fact that I like food first
You
and then the
should.
fact that I'm a therapist.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely the other way around, yeah.
I can't tell you how many times if I'm like at a party or really anywhere and it's like, oh, what do you do? I'm a therapist. Like, I get like a couple reactions. One, it's like, are you judging me right now? And like, I'm not getting. Are you going to pay me? Because I'll do it if you pay me. And the other one is like just all of their life story. Just here's everything. What should I do? I'm like, you can book a session, or we can just pretend like we're normal people and you don't have to tell me.
I think that that's something when I'm talking with like the interns or like somebody that's newer in the field, and I ask why therapy, what brought you here, and they're like, well, people. I just listen to people and people talk to me, and I'm like, that is like the therapist curse, but also a blessing. You can be at like a party and you're like, oh, I love this potato salad, and somebody's just like, my sister died in the war, and I'm like, okay, we were just talking about potato salad, but let's, I was like, okay, we're going there. Let me just set down my plate and we can talk about this. But I was like, that is a curse that like people just want to talk to you. So that's good.
We have this way of making people feel comfortable and safe, right?
Mhm, mhm. I think one of the things that doesn't feel safe is when you start challenging some of your familial patterns. So I was talking about this idea of like diet culture and those types of things. And so when you start to challenge some of that speaking, so it's like, your parent says, oh, I just ate so much, I shouldn't eat anything else, and it's like, well, actually that's restrictive, and let's talk about, and they're like, don't psychoanalyze me, and I'm like, well, no, I'm just talking about the way we view things, and we should probably question why we think that way. But they don't see me as therapist, they see me as the annoying brother or child, but
Who happens to be a therapist and has lots of opinions on things.
Yeah, but that's like usually like number 5 on the list of things that I am to them. So,
So I did think that today would actually be a great opportunity for us to talk about cultural perspectives on relationships and food, because I think we all have some background or some overlap dealing with, individuals or with families. I mean, we're all social beings. We all have relationships. We all have to eat. There's a pretty big overlap, and everybody kind of having to navigate this and having that cultural lens of how different that looks and feels within families, I think is really important to kind of discuss or like to analyze a little bit together.
Katie, for you, I'm wondering, like, how does food come up in your sessions? Does it come up at all? Or like, is this
Yeah.
something that it's like, it comes up personally, but not in like sessions?
No, actually, it comes up a lot, and it can show up for different reasons. So, well, we actually just recorded another episode with one of my colleagues who specializes in OCD as well, but she also specializes in eating disorders. And we were saying how common and how much of an overlap there is with eating disorders and OCD. So it could show up in that sense. It can show up if we're thinking about like body image, it can show up with like body dysmorphia. We'll see that fairly often. It can show up with perfectionism. It shows up just culturally and just, how, I mean, we just because we're working on OCD doesn't mean we don't talk about those kinds of things, right? It shows up in terms of actually. Really interestingly, I have some people, I mean, there's a lot of people who have a emetophobia, so like fear of throwing up, and they'll avoid certain foods because they don't want it to trigger them having to get sick or throwing up. A lot of people with OCD have a lot of rituals around food, actually, hand washing before eating, like contamination, those kinds of things. Sometimes we're doing exposures around sensory related difficulties with food. Sometimes it's a behavioral activation homework, and people will bake me things and bring them in. So actually, I feel like I talk about food all the time.
Katie's just giving out homework to everyone, like make me different kinds of cookies.
And I tell them, like, you don't have to, but if it's something you love to do and want to bring them in, like, I'll eat
That's
them.
awesome.
You start going through a cookbook. You're like, let's go through this chapter of desserts, you know.
Yeah, we're learning how to cook, and so this would be a good thing to learn and to then bring into the session.
Katie, how do you see that come up for different like cultural backgrounds for people who may have OCD and like struggle with like food or how they eat food and having like their family's input on it? Because every culture is different a little bit around food and how important it is, or there's certain things to eat, or like the way you eat, being full, things like that.
Hmm. Well, I don't think that I've actually seen a lot of diversity, at least where I'm at right now, as it relates to cultural differences in food and the way people eat. I would say the most common thing that comes up is parents having diets and kids and teenagers feeling like they need to, a lot of that perfectionism or eating disorders kind of stuff, feeling like they need to do eat certain things or not eat certain things. Sometimes parents are putting that pressure on their kids. Other times the parents are not putting pressure on their kids, and the kids see their parents just doing these things. So I think I see that kind of across the board. Sometimes with athletes too, that's another kind of thing too. I mean, they obviously have their own kind of things, and using exercises like a compensatory behavior. So that's something that shows up sometimes. So, yeah.
And I hate you know, I'm not an athlete. Surprise, surprise, I'm not. But but I, I like Taylor Swift. I like film, that kind of thing. But I come from a family of athletes. My brother coaches professional lacrosse, as you can see from my shirt. But there's something that is always said of like, it takes determination, it takes this, it takes that, and almost like you having a really weird relationship with food is like praised in some ways, especially for like male athletes. Because I think that for men, there's this idea like, oh, I'm cutting weight. And I'm like, you're 7. What do you mean? Because they don't want to go up a weight class or something like that. They decide to switch their diet so that they're not eating certain foods. And I'm just like, your body is growing and now you're getting rid of this food or this type of, like, you're getting rid of all the carbs. I'm like, well, your body does need some semblance of a carb, especially when you're growing. But I think that especially for, men, this idea of like indulging, and it's like, oh, he just eats everything. Oh, he does this, he does that. And I think that sometimes it's just like normalized, but you're not realizing, well, what if he has a binge disorder? Like is that being assessed for? But oftentimes it's almost like, oh, these things are strictly female, which then puts a different type of pressure, on females, and it's just a horrible dynamic. It's a horrible system, but oftentimes this weird relationship with food is praised, and I'm just like, I don't love this, and I see it as they grow up, and I see it as like my clients are talking about their childhood, and I'm just like, we really need to stop doing this to our kids.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I was actually thinking about that earlier, that I feel like it's so much more common for society and families to put more focus, especially negative focus, on females around food and eating versus males, right? Like you don't really think about if men are binge eating, right? It's like, oh, they're growing. He's a growing boy. He's just putting on weight, or like he's, eating clean so he can lose weight and then he's bulking up. Like this constant yo-yo, and it's seen as like they're just working on their body and it's normal. But I don't often hear or see clients, at least for me, having male clients come in talking about their relationship with food or having it be something that is like a conflict or an issue with them. Everyone kind of sees it as like, oh, that's just a normal thing for men to do. I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, and then there's like the double standard too, because like for men, it's like, oh, like you said, oh, you're a growing boy, you need this, like all of that is kind of like heaped on. And then in some cultures that I've worked with, the idea of like food is love, which I think is really great. Like food is a way of like showing love, your appreciation for the person. But then it's almost like if they're given something and then they're slapped in the face for taking it. It's like, oh, you need to eat. Oh, but don't eat too much. Oh, you've eaten too much. Now you're fat. Now you're this. And it's oftentimes that double standard for women in the family. Their culture says you need to eat. This is how we show our love, but don't overindulge and don't become fat, because that is the worst thing that can happen.
I feel like that's pretty prevalent across a lot of cultures, because I'm thinking about like Eastern European, like that is constantly, right? Like showing love through food, cooking, and showing that you love them back is eating everything off of your plate and making sure you tell them how much you loved it, enjoyed it. And if you don't eat it at all, it's rude, like you didn't like my food. But then at the same time, they judge you for your appearance and make all these comments. Like in our culture, it's like, oh, she looks healthy. If someone says you look healthy, it means you put on weight. That's their nice way of saying you put on weight, and like, you shouldn't be eating that much, but also eat everything off your plate to not be rude, but don't get fat. Like, here's these double standards. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm part Italian, and that part of my culture and my upbringing is very much in those same kind of messages being reinforced. And I think I mean, obviously, as generations are, going down the line, things change. But yeah, I would say that's like that was really common amongst like grandparents saying things like that. Even some older aunts and uncles, like, yeah.
Have you? I'm wondering how you both respond when you hear somebody say like, hi, my name's so and so, and I'm a fat cis woman. I think it's great that folks are like reclaiming that title of like being fat and like, this is my body, this is what it looks like. But there is this internal like like this gasp when somebody says I'm fat, and because the immediate response is like, no, you're not, you're this, and so it just is. Katie, you were talking about like how things shift, and now this idea of like reclaiming this word as fat, and that it's not derogatory, it's just a way of describing your body. It's like, I don't know how you both respond if you've ever experienced that, but
I've never experienced anyone actually present saying that about themselves ever. I've heard about it in like trainings and things, and how we, the continuing education for us to be aware of that. So I'm aware of it, but I've never had anybody come in and be like, "I'm fat," or like, "I identify as a fat woman." Like, nobody does, or at least nobody that I have seen. Not that nobody ever does, but nobody that I have worked with.
Yeah, similar. I haven't had anyone. If anything, it's the opposite. Like, oh, I'm fat, and they say it in a very negative way, or this is how I feel. It's like very much surrounded by a negative, right? Like how people are treating them, how they feel about themselves, what they think they deserve, their worth, all of it around like this one observation of their body type. But I haven't had anyone, like Katie said, come in to say it in a positive way or just like a matter of fact way.
And it reminded me of, when I saw this, because I think it was also a therapist. It was like, hi, I'm a fat queer therapist. And I'm like, oh, this is a lot. This is like, I'm like, I feel like I have to be like, no, that's okay. But it reminded me of somebody, they were talking and they said, oh yeah, I'm fat. And the person goes, no, you're beautiful. And they just go, well, I said I was fat. I didn't say that I wasn't beautiful, and I was like, that's important, because I think a lot of times if you hear somebody say I'm fat, the connotation is like, oh, this person doesn't think that they're beautiful. They don't think that they're attractive. So now that people are reclaiming this word of fat, it's like there is this knee-jerk reaction of, oh, I have to praise this person because they feel some type of way. When in reality, it's like, do they feel that way?
Yeah, just the assumption or the stigma or the fat phobia. It's so deeply ingrained in our culture, like so deep. I'm trying to break it myself because I have a daughter, and it's just so hard, right? Like logically, cognitively, I can understand this doesn't mean anything negative, but it's still emotionally, like those thoughts, those beliefs and narratives keep popping up to think about that. Like if someone thought I was, or I look this way, right? It's interesting to think about how deeply it's laid into our, like the fabric of our society. That's like, even when if a child, like I remember seeing like little kids that like, you're fat. And then the mom will go, oh, how dare you say that? That's so rude. When they're a kid, they're just making an observation about somebody.
The common thing for kids too is like, oh, you have a big belly. And immediately the parents are like, oh my God. And it's like, I do have a big belly, or they do have a big belly. There are certain things that a child can point out of like, oh, you have a nice smile. But like when it's like factual things, it's then seen as derogatory or rude. And I'm just like, oh, the kids don't know. Or like, is this teaching them something? I understand not commenting on other people's bodies, but is there a way that we can redirect the behavior without making this connotation of a big belly is bad?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a very mindful approach, actually, because if we're thinking of the definition of mindfulness, right, like paying attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment, and like if we can just kind of accept a way of defining something for what it is without having like that judgment towards it, it takes everything away from it. And it's the same with any of this other treatment, right? Like a lot of times people with OCD are judging their thoughts all the time. And that's when they make these assumptions about, oh, I'm a bad person because I have these thoughts, right? Well, really, it's just a thought. You had a thought, okay. Same with, okay, my body has fat, okay. And what's wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this generation, Gen Z, is definitely going to, I think, break a lot of that, which I think is great too, is a lot more body acceptance and just not feeling so shameful or negative about themselves constantly.
Like social media, like on one hand, yes, they are better with some of that, but they also are so impacted by social media and like comparing themselves to other people. Like I have more people that are younger come in and say things. They'll be like, "Oh, she's a body positive or like accepting queen or something like that." But then when they're also talking about themselves, it's like, "Okay, but like that girl on Instagram looks better than me," kind of thing. So
It's tough.
it's a work in progress,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
It takes time.
One thing I do love is that I feel like you see the trickle of this like attempt to be body positive or like, not, go into these like negative, like really like diet filled kind of thoughts. You see it trickle through the other generations. So it's almost like millennial folks are like, yeah, I feel confident in myself, right, Gen Z? And they're like, yeah, you should. And millennials are like, yeah, I am. They're a little bit more confident, as opposed to being told you're ruining the world and your avocado toast is why you can't afford a house. Like Gen Z is like, no, you're great. And millennials are like, I'm great. Like whisper. So, well, and Katie, you had mentioned social media. I think that one of the other things, obviously TikTok, depending upon when this episode airs, RIP TikTok. I'm just kidding. But there's a couple on there. I think her name is Alicia, and then her husband's name is Scott. And Alicia has a bigger body, and then Scott is more physically fit. And the comments that she has to go through, we've talked about, family, and we've talked about, parent child, but then I'm also thinking about the dynamic of being in a relationship and having to navigate differences of body type, because everybody thinks, oh, Scott could do better. Scott could do this. Scott could do that. When he's actually saying like, no, this is my wife. I love this person. I don't, like her body is her body. I celebrate her body. I worship her body. Like, but all of the comments, even if it's like, oh, we're going on a date, there's going to be like, oh, why are you with her? Oh my God, he's so much better. And I'm just like, yeah, social media is a place like, even if you're trying to be a positive about yourself, there's somebody waiting in the wings to just, tear you down with these like attacks for no reason. Like, what are they going to get out of it?
I've actually think I've seen the same couple where the male is like really built and fit, and then his partner is in a bigger body, and I've seen those comments, and it's just so interesting to think about, even like the cultural perspective of like a heterosexual relationship, like which partner is more attractive or they can do better just based on their physical appearance. Like we don't know anything else about this person's personality, how they treat them, how they make them feel, what they have to offer in a relationship, right? Like we're just basing it off of this person looks fit, this one doesn't, this one should get with someone more attractive or on their level or something, or that a male who is attractive would date a woman who's not as attractive versus the other way around, which I think is like seen as more common in our society. So that's an interesting thing to point out.
Right. And if it's the woman dating a male who's less attractive, it's because he has money. Like that's another one of these like things. It's like, well, it's okay because, she's doing it for the money.
Yeah. Or he has a really good job, or there's something else going on, a redeeming quality here.
Yeah, there's always this sense of like, if you are a bigger, well, and also I think that if you're a larger man, it's almost like that's okay. If you are, like bigger, you're bulkier, up to a point, it's okay. But when you start looking like flabby, or, that, you know, oh, you're eating too much, like that's when it shifts from, oh, you're in this like standard relationship, to, oh, why is she with this person when they don't take care of themselves? That is the biggest comment. Oh, if you're bigger, you don't take care of yourself. And I'm just like, you don't know. You are just making a snap judgment based off of a body type that's bigger than yours, or it's based off of internalized messages that you've heard, and now you're projecting those. I see it a lot in the sessions that I have, where it's like, I was always told I wasn't good enough, and it was based off of somebody in their family or in their close circle who was actually projecting some of those internalized messages themselves. And it's really unfortunate, because I'm just like, your body type is not necessarily going to be the same as everybody in your circle. And it's really unfortunate to have somebody project that onto you when that was never how your body type was going to be.
That's tough to think about the family impact on like those messages too. I think it's, the world is pretty tough as it is, but then when you're growing up in a family and having like your parents or siblings or family members making negative comments about your body, or pointing things out that you might either didn't know you should feel insecure about based on these comments, or now that you already are constantly saying these things, I feel like it makes it like there's no safe place, right, for you to just like exist in your body and be comfortable. Because how can you be mindful and present when you're constantly going through these thought process of, what are they thinking about me? Do I look bad? How am I looking? Should I cover my stomach? Right? It's like a kind of like the OCD, right? You have all these thoughts going through nonstop, and how can you be present or enjoy your relationships or whatever you're doing in that moment when you constantly have this like chatter in your head and outside in your family too?
Yeah, Alan, I also, this is like a little off, but like going back to what you were saying about how it's like more acceptable for men to be in bigger bodies, like I was thinking about how women are always like, I love a dad bod. They'll call it like a dad bod. But like you'll hear men out here being like, I love a mom bod,
Mm-hmm.
Like that doesn't happen.
That's so funny. They say MILFs, but that's not what they mean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
well, and yeah, like even Hollywood standards, it's like, oh, I love, Pamela Anderson, or I love, um, I love Taylor Swift, but like a lot of people will say, I love Taylor Swift. But then they'll be like, oh, I love, Adam Sandler. Oh, Adam Sandler's so hot. And I'm like,
Yeah, like
I
Pete
mean,
Davidson.
Adam
That's the
Sandler.
thing. Everybody's like, oh,
Yeah.
Pete Davidson. Yeah, yeah.
And I
Yeah,
mean,
but for women, it's like
go,
Stacy's mom.
She's got it going on. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, go Adam Sandler. Yeah, I'm like, go Adam Sandler. You are getting it. You're living the dream. But like, there's even that double standard. Like you said, like, they say MILF, but it isn't because they like a mom. It's like, no, it's this person who's fit and is cooking and has time between kids to go get lingerie. And I'm like, that's not a standard
That
mom,
is, let me tell you, that is not, no one's got time for that.
Somebody who's listening is like, excuse me, I do that. How dare
Good
you?
for
Well, I mean, you
you.
did it.
Good for
That's
you. Let
great.
me know who is your babysitter and are they affordable, because I need this in my life.
um, Speaking of Taylor Swift, because I was going to bring her up. That is, maybe I am looking a little bit too much into the Eras tour, but hear me out. Because as I said, there is that standard response of, if you're bigger, you don't take care of yourself. And I immediately think of the Eras Tour dancers. There are so many different body types represented on her dance like team. And I'm like, you cannot tell me that any of those people, no matter what their body type look like, doesn't take care of themselves. They are running, they're jumping, they are dancing their heart out for hours. And it just shows like, no, your body is just going to look the way that it looks. It doesn't mean that you're unhealthy if you're a bigger body. These people are doing things that I already get tired like watching them do, and they're just doing it in the heat and everything. So I'm just like, I don't think that this adage of like, if you're bigger, you're not taking care of yourself, I don't think that it stands on anything, because yeah, I'll say, go watch Era's tour, but you should watch it anyway. But really, just I think it really does say something.
Yeah, or just go to the gym. I think this every morning when I go to the gym and I see other people and I look at the different kind of bodies that people have, and it's like I know this isn't like, your first week at the gym. Like I see these same people and I've seen them for months, and everybody has a different type of body, some much bigger, some much smaller, and I mean, bringing it back to food, like that it plays a lot into it. Doesn't mean you're not taking care of yourself, or at least in terms of exercise. In fact, perhaps you're not taking care of yourself, not always, but sometimes people in smaller bodies are not taking care of themselves. Like there's a reason that people with eating disorders, like it's one of the highest mortality rates for mental health. So that's scary.
Have you had any experience with it's like a an aversion to eating certain types of food? I want to say it's FICA. It's not FICA. That's a credit score. Well, not the like I'm so mad because I'm like seeing it in my head, but it's all like shadowy. And once again, I follow somebody on TikTok who they have this thing where they can't eat certain food, like they have an aversion to eating like foods because of like texture and um there's a name for it, but I'm not going to be able to remember it right now. But in the videos, you go on a journey with this person, and it's not because they're picky eaters. It's not because they just are like, oh, I stick to what I know. It's like literally, it's a mental battle for me to eat this new food substance. And it's really cool to be able to see this person like try the new foods and like, love the flavors, or like, I hate the consistency, but it was nice to try, that kind of thing. But even that, sometimes it's like, downgraded to, well, that's not a just eating disorder, that's, you're just being picky. And it's like, no, you don't get to tell people like what they're going through doesn't matter when it comes to food, their relationship to it, and the way that they have to kind of like talk themselves into eating certain foods.
Yeah, for sure. I see that with autism spectrum disorder all the time. Like that's like a big presenting thing that I see working with individuals on the autism spectrum. Yeah, we see a lot of different food sensitivities and like I was saying, like around sensory related things. Oh my gosh, that reminds me. This is not related. It is related, but it's not related. It's related to me. This weekend, I was I was getting sushi, and my brother got this boba tea, and I never had it before, and I always envisioned the little like bubbles like to pop in your mouth, and I guess there are some that do, but the ones that I tried do not pop in your mouth. And you should have seen my face when I was trying that, because I was like so surprised, because I thought it was going to like, and then it would be like this nice little like satisfying moment of it bursting, and it didn't. And it was like mushy and slimy. And like for me, with my sensory desires, that was not it.
Keep my jokes to myself.
I can't eat. I can't drink. Yeah, I can't do it. I can't do bubble tea. And it's for that same reason. My body's like, oh, we're drinking something. And then when there's something that comes up that is supposed to be like chewed or something, my body's like, no, this shouldn't be happening. That
Yeah,
means somebody
yeah.
like spit in it or something like that. And I'm like, some people swear by bubble tea, and I think that's wonderful for them.
Right.
For me, my body's just like, we cannot do this. We can't do
I have
it.
that feeling
Mm,
about rice
yeah.
pudding. I think it's very similar. Like rice pudding
Yes.
really rubs me the wrong way
Like
too.
tapioca.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you brought up.
Cottage cheese.
I actually like cottage cheese,
I love a good cottage
That
cheese. I love a good
but I think there's a lot of, I don't want to say disorders, but a lot of sensory processing conditions where that comes up, right? Like feeling icky or having this like unsettling experience around food or different things. Does that, I mean, I know I have ADHD and that's like part of it. Do you see that at all, Katie or Alan? Like anybody with different kinds of like mental health disorders having that very similar experience with it that may not be an eating disorder, but like something in terms of like sensory processing?
Um,
yeah,
the
absolutely.
the
We
term that
would
I was
I would
looking for
categorize that
is
under like disgust. Go ahead. What was the term?
the term is ARFID,
ARFID? Wait, I'm sorry. What is
Oh.
ARFID?
Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. That's the one where it's what I was talking about. The that like the aversion to eating like certain foods, or like restricting what types of food you are eating. And then, that it's not just like, oh, I'm picky. It's more of like this cognitive, like I am fighting to attempt, like go out of my way to do this, so.
I'm glad you looked that up because when you said FICA, I thought of pica. And I was like, but that's not the same thing. That's like when people are eating things that they shouldn't be eating, right? Like chalk or whatnot, which is also like a legitimate disorder.
So interesting. Isn't there a show? I think there's a show on, I don't know if it's like Bravo or
like My Strange Addiction. Is that
something like that. And
Yeah.
like I remember watching one episode where this lady just could not stop eating mothballs. Just so interesting. It's fascinating to see like what our minds either like are disgusted by and just push away versus like what we just cannot help but do because somehow it's satisfying in some way, right? Like cognitively something's going on to make that like make you want to do something that is not good for you. I guess that goes for a lot of things in our life.
Well, and then being able to like bring it up to talk about it, because there's so much shame around it. Like, oh, this is very weird for me. Even when it is like, oh, I might be picky, or, I do have disordered eating, or this is going on. Like the shame of bringing that up, because it's this idea of like, oh, you need to, fit this image of health. You need to do this, but, we don't care how you do it. Just do it. And so this idea of like, oh, I have disordered eating, or I am restricting, or I'm binging. There's a lot of shame in that. And for my clients, just even being able to, recognize that maybe their relationship with food isn't as healthy. And even for myself as therapist, being able to say to myself, like, my relationship with food isn't always the healthiest. And what does that mean? And who do I have in my support system to talk about it with? Because just kind of keeping it in yourself and in your head and keeping it to yourself, it just keeps you in that shame spiral. And it's like, how am I going to get out of this other than find that community that's going to support me, and allow me to kind of share, this is what's going on with me. What does that mean for my relationship with food?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people, either if they're considered picky eaters or some people might view them that way, or eating disorders, like people around them make these comments like, well, just try it. Like just this pushy nature of like, just do it. It's not a big deal. It's just willpower, or you're just being silly. Like just do the thing, without taking time to think about like, this isn't just like a quick decision or something like that. Like this is ongoing, like an ongoing struggle and internal battle that they're having. So I think just like also letting people know, if someone seems like a picky eater, like don't force them, right? If someone is sober and they're coming to a party and they don't drink, you don't continue asking them to drink something, right? Like you respect people's decisions and wishes to like do what they need to do for themselves.
Yeah. And I think just this idea of, just do X. I mean, we've heard the adage of like, oh, I'm depressed. Well, be happy.
Cool.
Novel idea. Who did not think about that? Wow, I am fixed. So it's like, oh, you binge, don't eat as much. Who would have thought that? Are you Sigmund Freud? Like, wow, this is crazy. I wish it were that easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. OCD people all the time just don't think about it. Wow. Mm-hmm. Great idea.
We would all be out of jobs if it was that easy.
That
Yeah. This whole field.
Yeah, right.
I would love that. Yeah. Hey, just communicate better. Session over. I'll communicate. Let me get that message to my mind, and like let me stop overthinking, or let me stop, ruminating on this fact. So I would love being out of a job, but that's not the way. People need therapy, and I would love for that not to be true, but some of these things that we are just do this, it's deeper than that. And I'm hoping that for anybody who's listening, who has been told, oh, just do this thing, unfortunately, as you know, it's not going to be that easy. So definitely reaching out to folks who are here to support and help is probably and hopefully your next step after hearing some of the things we're talking about.
I mean, these things are habits and patterns that are ingrained, right? Like just automatically, like a default that goes through, like just when you start your day, like you wake up, you might go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, like it's just on autopilot. Some of this, like this is ingrained of things that you just do. try starting a new habit. It is not easy, right? Even if it's something you want to do, it's good for you. There's all these reasons. You even set up everything around you. You're still going to like fall off because it takes a long time to like develop something different, right? Like it's a whole paradigm shift. It's not just I do this thing one time and now it sticks forever. Like it's just not how our brains work. I think it's people have a hard time recognizing that in other people and not themselves, right? Because how many times have we all tried to do something and it doesn't stick, but we think someone else can just fix something or do something different and they'll be fine. So there's actually this, this is like unrelated, but kind of related. So when I was learning about like psychedelics and things, how it impacts our brain, there's actually this thing called the default mode network in our brain that has like these neurological pathways that like build grooves for beliefs and narratives that we have constantly. And so there was like this good example in this book called Change Your Mind or Change My Mind, is that when you're born, you have all of these messages coming at you. If you think of like a field of snow, if you walk down a certain path where your footsteps are, you continue to go down that same path, right? Because the footsteps are already there. So it's kind of like the beliefs we have about ourselves and these narratives is just constantly the same thing, like I'm a bad person or I'm fat or blah, 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 right? And then when you do a psychedelic, it shakes it up like a snow globe and lays flat snow again. And you can have a new belief or a new narrative about yourself that wasn't there before. And it creates this whole new path for you to think about yourself in such a different way. And it actually sticks because it's on such a deeper neurological level than just on like a conscious level. So I thought that was super fascinating. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's super interesting.
That's my small TED talk.
I think and it almost sounds like what happens when I like engage folks in narrative therapy, this sense of like attempting to rewrite this narrative and attempting to like focus on this old unfortunate or not helpful narrative as the issue, and working to block it from continuing and forging this new way of thinking. Obviously it seems like a little bit more internal and medical, but and probably a little bit more short term than long term narrative therapy. But it does sound like that very similar thing of like just laying this new narrative and laying this new thought pattern and kind of deleting that old way of thinking.
Yeah, very similarly, I was thinking about treating PTSD and doing like cognitive processing therapy, especially if you're doing the version where you're writing the account out. Either way, you're still trying to kind of reframe a lot of those beliefs. And it makes sense because there's so much research coming out now about like psychedelics and treating PTSD. So we got some interesting stuff coming up in the field around that.
I'm super excited I think it's going to be the next wave as the psychedelics are coming through. I'm ready for it. I've been fascinated and in love with this for a really long time. I think that MAPS, I think it's the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelics, just passed their law in Oregon to be able to provide psychedelic assisted therapy with MDMA for social anxiety and for trauma. Because they've seen the trials that they were doing on social anxiety is that when people were taking this and going through it, their even PTSD, I think it was like 40 to 50% of the participants no longer qualified for the diagnosis of PTSD after I think 3 or 4, don't quote me, I forget how many, but like a certain amount of being able to take this with a therapist there in a safe environment and everything, and then no longer being able to identify or no longer having that diagnosis because their symptoms were gone over 6 months. Like this wasn't like a week later they tested. It was like over a 6-month period they were able to see like they were no longer having PTSD, which is wild to think about.
I'm curious how like these types of treatments might apply to like disordered eating and like those types of processes. And has there been any like study on that? I'm sure once insurances find out that this is a shorter stay, then they're going to be like, this is great, so.
Yeah, we'll see the policies and the regulations around it. But I mean, these things have been around for forever, right? Indigenous people have been using these plant medicines. I could go into this for like another 5 hours, but this just made me think about all of this, how much it shifts our narratives and our beliefs. Like you were saying, like narrative therapy or cognitive processing is like changing the beliefs, right? It's not just doing the thing. It has to go in hand with like the actual belief and thoughts we have with it. Otherwise, it's pretty short-lived. So we're getting close to the end. Is there anything either of you want to share? Any closing thoughts for the listeners? This was like kind of a rogue episode where we kind of just like went with the flow, which was really cool.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest takeaways is, if you're a clinician, really being willing to go into those hard conversations about food and the relationship with food, and not just assuming that it's not necessarily playing a role in the things that you're talking about in therapy, because I think it is something that is often overlooked, especially by clinicians, and really start challenging some of your internal thoughts about food. And then if you're a listener who's struggling with their own internalized thoughts about food, reach out. If you don't have a community that's going to be supportive, reach out to a therapist, reach out to myself, so that we might begin, exploring like what does a healthy relationship with food look like for you, and what are some internalized, thoughts or patterns that you've noticed that you need support in breaking and changing.
Well, Alan, thank you so much for being a guest on today and returning. This was awesome. Katie, thanks for guest co-hosting. This was a great time. Thanks so much for both being on. And if you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yes, thanks so much.
Bye.